Tonight, a warning for Michael Cohen, the judge in Trump's hush money case, denying Trump's request for a gag order against Cohen, but asking prosecutors today to, quote, communicate to Mr. Cohen that the judge is asking him to refrain from making any more statements. Trump's attorneys had specifically complained to the judge about this TikTok that Cohen posted on Wednesday. You see him there wearing a white T-shirt with a picture of Donald Trump behind bars in an orange jumpsuit. It all comes as key witnesses in this case, like Cohen and Stormy Daniels, are facing growing attacks from Trump supporters during the trial. Jason Carroll, he is out front.
Stormy Daniels has made no secret about threats she received after the former president was indicted on charges related to 2016 hush money payments centered around her. The former adult film star described how her life has changed in the documentary titled Stormy.
You just signed your death warrant. I don't know what that means.
Daniels has spoken about fear not only for her, but for her family, and persistent threats, which he says have gotten progressively worse.
Before it was just like these loudmouth, armchair, anti-porn, like judgmental, hypocritical people, faceless. Now they are doing it like a suicide bomber. They truly, in their depths, but more importantly, in the depths of their soul, they feel like they are doing the right thing.
Recently, Daniels shared this message with Outfront, a threat to physically abuse her family. Also a target, prosecution witness and former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker. According to Reuters, on the same day Pecker testified last month, he was the target of a swatting incident. Swatting is when someone calls in a phony emergency report to authorities accusing someone of a crime with hopes of triggering a police response. It did not work and did not prevent Pecker from taking the stand.
We will not be intimidated as a community by threats, and we're here to watch our DA's back.
Last March, community leaders in New York spoke out in support of District Attorney Alvin Bragg after he and his office were inundated with threats related to the Trump criminal case. And twice last year, the office received letters with white powder. One said, "Alvin, I'm going to kill you." According to an affidavit from the commanding officer of Bragg's security detail, at its peak in March 2023, more than 600 emails and phone calls received by the DA's office were forwarded for security review.
You don't have to stretch your imagination to imagine what might happen if some of Donald Trump's most ardent supporters take matters into their own hand in some way, in a way that they think protects him or somehow stands up for him, and they react violently.
A gag order put in place to try and deter Trump from speaking about witnesses, jurors, and most others associated with the trial, possibly inciting more threats. Judge Juan Merchan found Trump to be in contempt of the order on several occasions, including most recently after he made comments about the makeup of the jury. But the gag order doesn't prohibit him from making comments about the judge. The former president continuing to lash out at him, calling Merchan crooked and highly conflicted.
And Trump has repeatedly said over and over that the gag order is unfair. And in fact, at one point, he called it a disgrace. It prohibits him from talking about that key witness, Michael Cohen, scheduled to testify probably this upcoming Monday. Meanwhile, Cohen has made any number of numerous comments about Trump, making numerous jabs at him. You already showed what he did on TikTok on social media there. The judge overseeing the case has told prosecutors to tell Cohen basically, look, stop making comments about the case. But prosecutors admitting they have very little control over him. Sounds familiar.
Yeah. All right, Jason, appreciate it. Thank you. Out front now is Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's former attorney. Lanny, good to have you here. Now, you've actually said that the threats have increased for Michael Cohen as well since the start of this trial. By continuing to post and talk about Donald Trump and this case, is that actually making those threats worse, do you think?
Well, I think in terms of the objective of a fair trial and not drawing the ire of the judge, I think Michael understands that it's time for restraint. But I have to at least sympathize with his being the subject of attacks by the President of the United States, his wife, her father, and pretty vicious ongoing threats that are a result of the president, the former president, making those attacks. So he's acting out of passion and out of hurt. But I think now going forward, he recognizes that the objective is a fair trial. Mr. Trump's entitled to the presumption of innocence. Michael, as a key witness, wants to be effective and fair.
So in terms of that, then, are you saying, based on what we heard, what you've heard from Michael Cohen, what we heard today from the judge, imploring, right? He actually said he sympathizes with the defense here, with the defense legal team, and was imploring prosecutors, as we've just discussed, that he needs to impress upon Michael Cohen. This is the bench asking him to refrain from making any further statements. You think that message has gotten through?
Well, Eric, I have to question the word sympathizes. I think the judge is doing his job. I'm not sure there's any sympathy in just saying to Mr. Cohen it's not in the interests of the court's system of justice that now that he's about to be a principal witness. But he's not the same. Mr. Trump is an indicted individual, presumed to be innocent, but he's subject to a gag order because he's indicted. And Michael is a principal witness, so there is a difference.
You also talked about Michael Cohen wanting the former president to have a fair trial.
Yes.
Do you think there is a concern for Michael Cohen as well that if he were to continue to speak out, that it would, in fact, undermine his credibility or his testimony?
No. Michael's credibility has been established, and I can assure all the individuals, including members of panels on this network, that Michael Cohen lied, and the rest of the sentence that I don't hear even the prior panelists saying, and would ask everybody to remember the second half of the sentence. He lied on behalf of and for the benefit of Donald Trump. Now, that's not an excuse. Lying is, even if you do it for Trump, but that's the rest of the sentence. I think Michael recognizes that his testimony in this case, and I was with him for years while this case was being prepared, is corroborated in every detail, surrounded by witnesses, by text messages, by documents, by even witnesses friendly to Donald Trump, as occurred with his immediate White House receptionist or assistant, who saw Michael go into the Oval Office with a sitting president writing a check from his personal checking account to, quote, reimburse Michael for the advances made on this illegal hush money, which federal prosecutors working for Donald Trump's Justice Department said that Donald Trump directed Michael Cohen to make those payments, for which he did time in prison. So we'll see whether a jury finds the person who directed the crime to be also guilty of the same crime.
We saw how hard Donald Trump's team went after Stormy Daniels in cross-examination. It was personal. It was combative. She pushed back a fair amount. I think most people watching this would say it is fair to expect that they will likely go after Michael Cohen even harder. You know him well. Is he ready for that moment?
Yes, and he's already done it. People have short memories. On February 27th, 2019, live on international television under oath, Michael Cohen testified without the protection of a judge in front of 15 partisan Republicans attacking him, calling him liar. A sign on the wall was liar, liar, pants on fire. And when he testified at the end of the day, the Honorable Elijah and late Elijah Cummings, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, complimented him on his credibility. So he's been through the test, and I think he will testify and surprise all those that are looking for him to blow up and get angry. He stayed calm during his testimony, and I think that's the way he'll be during the testimony in the next week.
Lanny Davis, appreciate your insight tonight.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Thank you.